Good morning, viewers. My name is Vijay Arya, and I welcome you for today's channel-based counseling session for MBA program, where I will be referring today another session for the Strategic Management course, that is MMPC 12. As you remember, in the last session, we referred unit number 7, that is of business level strategy, of the block number 3, that is formulation of the strategy. So in today's session, we will be covering two important units of block number 3, that is formulation of the strategy, in which we will be covering the competitive level strategy, and second is the corporate level strategy. So let's begin the unit number 8. So we will be covering in that the competitive strategy concept, the formulation of competitive strategy, the wheels of competitive strategy, level of formulating competitive strategy, and various factors and parameters that helps in determining formulation of competitive strategy. Then we will also include in the part of our discussion framework for competitor analysis, components of a competitor analysis, and the role of competitor analysis components in referring to the competitive strategy. We will also refer the concept and the types of competitive moves and the key dimensions of the competitive strategy. Subsequently, we will also learn today about the fragmented industries and the emerging industries, all about it, and the different elements of structural environment in the case of the emerging industries. And subsequently, we will discuss about the competitive strategies in fragmented and emerging industries. So let's start discussing about the concept of competitive strategy. As this word is something which derives from the rivals, it means that the strategy that the firm is determining or trying to analyze is considering the rival's position. And therefore, competitive strategy means defining how the firm intends to create and maintain a competitive advantage with respect to its rivals in the industry. Subsequently, the holding a competitive advantage over competitors means to be more profitable than the competitors over the long term. Here, we need to understand that this type of competitive strategy is a set of policies and procedures that helps a business in terms of uses to gain a competitive advantage over its rivals. And therefore, the process of identifying and executing actions that allow a firm to improve its competitive edge is something that is usually addressed through the competitive strategy. As an example, if we refer, then strategies may be to raise the value of their products and services for the purpose of consumers, maybe for the purpose of investors, or maybe the employees of the organization. Now, when we refer how the formulation of competitive strategies referred, then for that in fact, two important questions need to be answered by the manager themselves. And it helps them in terms of formulating the success for the competitive strategy. The first question arises that what are the goals of the organizations? And it is ultimately the end goals of the organization that need to be linked. Subsequent question arises is that what are the policies to achieve these goals? Here, the policies means the kind of means available to the organizations which will help the organization in terms of meeting out the goals, that is the end goals of the organization. So these two questions need to be asked by the managers. Now, based on this, there is one more concept in the competitive strategy, that is the wheels of competitive strategy. In this case, Porter 2008 has referred a kind of broader view of a firm in terms of the competitive strategy. As you can see, that around 10 such areas have been earmarked in terms of the goals which are linked in terms of finalizing or formulating the competitive strategy, whether it is the target markets, maybe the marketing, the sales, distribution, manufacturer, the workforce position, the purchasing position in the market, research and development possibilities in the market, and the finance and control, or maybe the product. So ultimately, the center point that we are talking about, the goal, it depicts the goals of the organizations, which defines the way the business is going to compete, including the economic and non-economic objective of the organization, just to meet out the core goals of the organizations. Subsequently, we also need to understand the levels of formulating the competitive strategy. And for that, two things. One is the organization perspective, and another is the industry specific aspect need to understand. For that, as you can refer in the visual, then from the company perspective or the firm perspective, you will notice that the internal aspect, that is the strength and weaknesses of the firm, that helps in terms of referring to the different type of factors which are particularly the internal ones to the company, and it subsequently have a link to the personal values of the key implementers. But at the same time, if we refer the competitive strategy or the linkages of the competitive strategy from the industry point of view, then the availability of the opportunities and the kind of threat, both in economic, non-economic, that may be a technical area, is something that subsequently refer to the external factors to the company, that may be something the societal expectations toward the organization. So it's a kind of label, or the kind of linkages between the internal and the external, that is the industry specific factors that uh, uh, make a kind of linkage between the competitive strategy, and a balance need to be referred in this case. Now, if we refer different factors which are associated in terms of determining or formulating of the competitive strategy, then an organization is required to test for consistency of the competitive strategy. And for that, around four such important variables are considered. First is the internal consistency, environmental fit, resource fit, and implementation. So we will talk about all these individually. So in the case of internal consistency, it deals in realistic goals, maybe the key operating policies of the organization that is in alignment with its goal. Subsequently, the key operating policies can also come under the internal consistency. That is for the purpose of in alignment with the each other. Subsequently, if we refer the environmental fit, then it emphasizes on in terms of capitalization of industry opportunities as per the goals and the policies. Further, it also refer the goals and policies which are deal with the industry threats, then the timing of the goals and the policies with respect to the environmental changes, then the goals and policies that respond to the societal expectations. The third parameter is the resource which means the goals and policies pertaining to in terms of matching the available resources or maybe adaptable to change, whether that feasibility is there or not. The fourth aspect of parameter in terms of factors determining formulation of competitive strategy is the implementation aspect. In that case, whether the goals are well designed or not, so which can be implemented can be considered. If it is not implementable, then it is something need to be questioned, need to be reworked. Second aspect that can be part of the implementation parameter is the alignment of goals and policies, and it has to have a link in terms of the core values. Other aspect is the sufficient managerial capabilities in terms of the effective implementation. And if we conclude with these four parameters, then the consideration of all these helps in formulating an effective competitive strategy for the firm. Now, based on these parameters, we also need to look at the framework for the competitor analysis. And for that, four major components have been identified. One is the feature goal, second is the current strategy, third is the assumptions, and the fourth is the capabilities of the competitor as part of the competitor analysis. And if we talk about the concept of this competitor analysis, it means like the major components of strategy formulation can be there. And as an organization, as an individual firm, it need to have an analysis of the competitor, to what extent they are having a well established into the market, or what kind of the current strategy they are adopting, and what are the kind of assumptions they are having in subsequent future point of view. So those are the factors or the framework which are considered in terms of the competitors' analysis point of view. And here, those components, if we refer in terms of the interlinkages, then it is something that the competitors' response profile need to be identified with some set of questions, like as one of the aspect is one of the component was the future goals. So that aspect is something that at all level of management and in multiple dimensions, subsequently the assumptions arises about itself and the industry. But this is something that we are talking about, that what drives the competitor to be compared to. But at the same time, what the competitor is doing and can do in future point of view, if we refer, then it is about the current strategy and the capabilities we are talking about of the competitor. So it means if we refer the current strategy, so we are trying to analyze that how the business is currently competing with the other firms. At the same time, if we talk about the capabilities dimension, then both the strength and the weaknesses of the firm need to be understood first. And after analyzing all these four components, some set of questions arises that the firm to the competitor need to examine in detail. The first question is that, is competitor satisfied with current position? If it is not, then there is going to be change by the competitor, and that can lead to a high amount of competition for the existing firms. The second question could be like, what strategy shift is competitor likely to make? That is something in terms of the capabilities a firm may plant. Third question is that, where is competitor vulnerable? And the fourth is, what will provoke a greatest retaliation? So these are some of the questions that need to be asked as an important component of competitor analysis. Now we need to refer each four of these components in detail, to what extent how they are helpful in terms of diagnosing the firm's position towards the competitors' positions. So the role of these competitor analysis we are talking about each of these competitor point of view. So the first component is the future goals. This aspect helps to diagnose the goals of the competitors by way of say predicting, and that prediction is usually in four terms. First is whether the prediction towards the current financial position of the competitor. The second is in terms of the strategic moves that the competitor may take place in near future, and that is if they are not satisfied their present position. So what will happen in the future action plan? The third is like predicting the reaction of the competitor to the external environment. And the fourth aspect of the future goal is like in terms of predicting reactions to strategic changes. The second part of the component in competitor analysis, the assumptions. And the assumptions helps to identify two categories of competitor assumptions. One, the self-assumption of the competitor, that is in terms of the market leader, the socially conscious organization. So these aspect can be, as a part of the self assumption one can refer to as a matter of the competitors analysis. The second assumption could be the competitors assumption about the industry and the other organizations which are as a part of the industry we can consider. The third component is the current strategy the rivals or the competitor is referring. So it's the third component, and it helps in terms of the assessing or making a detailed assessment of the current policies the competitor is referring, and it can include both the internal as well as the external functional areas. And if we refer the fourth component, that is about the capabilities. So it's about the strength and the weaknesses analysis. So it helps in terms of the assessing the competitors' positions, both in both the sense that is the strength and the weaknesses, and which we have also referred in the case of the Porter's five forces model in our previous sessions, which talk about the threats of new entrants, threats of substitute goods, the bargaining power of the supplier and the buyer, and the fifth one was the industry rivalry. Now, based on these four important components, we can conclude that combining these four components, the competitor's position, whether it is defensive in nature or offensive in nature, can be determined, and it can help us as an individual firm to make a specific stand. The second aspect can also be concluded based on these four components is that it helps organization to predict the moves to be made by the competitor in coming future. Now, the moment we are talking about the competitive move, we need to understand this term. So, competitive move is a market-oriented action newly launched by a firm that threatens the demand-supply status quo of the market. And an effective competitive move is one with a quick outcome that is favorable to the firm's interest and doesn't destabilize the industry or create a competitive one. So this aspect one has to be very clear about that what is competition and the competitive moves. It can vary from these perspectives. Now these competitive move can have two types, and we will be talking about these. The first is the cooperative or non-threatening move, or also known as the defensive competitive move. The second is the threatening move, or sometimes it is called as the offensive competitive move. So we will be talking that move as well. So in the case of first, that is the defensive competitive move, which doesn't threaten the competitor, and it has three major categories. The first is like by improving the position of the organization along with the position of the competitors, even if they are not at par. The second type of category within the defensive competitive move could be by improving the position of the organization along with the position of the competitors. And in that case, only if a significant number matches. The third type of category could be by improving the position of the firm as the competitors are not able to match with them. The second type of competitive move, if we talk about, it is something very challenging for the firm, and therefore it's more of a threatening move of the rival, that is of the competitor. And we also know it in terms of the offensive competitive moves, and it threaten the competitors like in the way like the key to such type of move is predicting and influencing retaliation. And here the retaliation can be fast or it can be slow, it can be effective, it can be ineffective, it can be tough, or it can be the soft one. And based on the kind of retaliation, the move can be adjusted as highly threatening or it may be mild too. So, if we refer the competitive strategy from the key dimensions point of view, then there are certain such key dimensions one need to refer to. So, first could be the specialization aspect, branding, pull or push level of the strategy that the firm is referring to. So we will be talking about all these key dimensions. So the first is the specialization. So the moment we are talking about the specialization means the key component or where the firm is having its specific strength which the others are not having. So the specialization means the focus on the efforts of the organization in specializing in terms of the product line, market segments, and the niche markets. Similarly, the another key dimension could be related to the branding. Here, the branding focuses on the brand identification of the products than on the competition, though through the promotional techniques. Then it can also include the push versus the pull type of strategy. The ultimate aim is in terms of the focus on the degree to which the brand identification can be done. And it can be using direct selling or online selling. And now we can understand the term pull strategy like it primarily involves the pushing the product or brand to the target market towards the customers. But in either reverse side or in the other way, if we refer the pull strategy, then it is one of the means in terms of attracting the interest of the customers towards the product or brand. So that is the key difference between the pull strategy as well as the pull strategy and the push strategy. The fourth dimension in the competitive strategy is about the distribution channel, and that helps in deciding the appropriate distribution channel the firm can have over the competitor's position. So it can include whether the distribution channel is company owned, whether it is something the retail outlet based, whether it is something online platform need to be referred, or is it something the especially specialty outlets need to be engaged to. The fifth key dimension is about the quality of product. In that case, the focus is more on the type of raw material or the kind of specification or the features. And altogether, it helps in terms of making a quality finished product for the firm. The sixth key dimension is about the technological leadership. The idea or the focus of this dimension is in terms of the degree to which an organization seeks a leadership in the technology front. The seventh key dimension is about the vertical integration. It is the degree to which the organization follows the kind of integration, whether it is forward or the backward integration. The eighth key dimension is the cost position of the firm, where the firm try to consider the optimum utilization of cost is considered for competitive advantages. The next key dimension is about the services. The services is in terms of the degree to which the organization provides ancillary services. It can include like in-house service network or the credit component, or to what extent the credit is given to the subsequent supply chain management or the customers, or maybe the after sales services. So these are part of these services as an important dimension. Next is the pricing policy that helps in describing the price position of the organization in the market. And this is something very distinct strategic variable, and it should be considered separately rather than a composite competitive strategy formulation point of view. The last but not the least is the leverage, which talk about the financial and the operating leverage position of the firm. And now we need to understand two major type of industries as a competitive strategy. We need to think, and based on that, a specific policies one can refer competitive strategy one can refer to. So one is the fragmented industry we are talking about. It means that it is one in which many companies compete, and there is no single or small group of companies. that prevail in the industry. So it's a mix of the trend you will notice. And as an example, if you try to understand, then the restaurants, if not that much branded, you will find within that fragmented industries cases, cab services, automobile repair and services, and the furniture business are commonly categorized under the head of the fragmented industries. And if we try to subsequently understand how and why we are talking about or categorizing them under the head of fragmented industries, then it comprises of the organizations which do not have a significant market share but can influence the industry strongly. Similarly, it consists of a large number of small and medium sized organizations. The industries make the environment unique in the sense that they do not have market leaders. If we refer some important steps of the competitive strategies applicable in the case of fragmented industries, then five such important steps are referred. First is the conducting industry and competitor analysis. And the idea behind this step is in terms of to identify the sources of the competitive forces in the industry and the standing of the competitors in the industry. The second step is like identifying the causes of fragmentation in industry. And the objective is in terms of to assess their relationship with the economies of the industry. The third step is in terms of examining the causes of fragmentation, and it helps in terms of to assess whether these causes can be overcome, say by innovation or by strategic changes. The fourth step is in terms of the predicting the new structural equilibrium in the industry. And the idea behind this step is in terms of predicting whether the industry is able to give attractive returns or not. The last step in the case of competitive strategies in the fragmented industries is like coping with fragmentation, which helps in terms of needs to select the best alternative to deal with the situation. Now, in addition to the fragmented industries, we also need to understand the term emerging industries. So, it is another type of group of industries where the companies in a line of business formed around a new product or idea that is in the early stage of development. And an emerging industry typically consists of just a few companies and is often centered around technologies which are either underdeveloped or very new to the market. Since they are new or reformed due to emergence of socio-economic developments, it results in their main feature that there are no specific rules of the game. Some certain example under the emerging industries are artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality platforms, online gaming systems, self-driving car. Tesla is an example you must have seen, and OTT platforms and the biotechnology. In the case of artificial intelligence, you must have seen very recently the chatbots are being adopted as an important platform while referring to a kind of online chatting platforms where the customers, rather than directly interacting with the employees of the company, they are getting solved their queries through these chatbots. Now, in addition to these emerging industries, we also need to refer the elements of the structural environments in terms of the emerging industries. For that, around seven such structural environments element have been identified. Maybe the kind of uncertain technological environment, maybe the uncertain strategy, the high volatility in the market. First-time buyers, they also refer the emerging industries for this case. Nascent organizations and spin-offs also cause of this emerging industries to, to grow further. Then shorter time period or maybe the subsidy are some of the other elements that helps or that led the emerging industries to further grow or to have the R&D practices or to subsequently refer a specific strategy. And now we need to refer the competitive strategies in the case of these emerging industries. And one can be the shaping industry structure by setting the industry rules, by making appropriate strategic choices in the areas of pricing and marketing, etc. The other competitive strategy could be in terms of the externalities, which means the organization should promote standardization and attract first time buyers so that it can subsequently establish their own brand and can retain those customers for a longer period of time. The third is competitive strategy in the case of emerging industries could be changing role of supply chain that adapt to the changing conditions of its suppliers and distribution channels for a strategic leverage. So that aspect can also be considered. Next is something the shift of mobility barriers, and that should avoid common barriers, maybe the proprietary technology, access to raw materials and distribution channel, cost advantage due to the experience curve. Now, we have reached to the end of unit number 8. Now, unit number 9 also need to be referred today. That will talk about the corporate level strategy. So far we have been able to discuss the business level strategy and the competitive strategy. This unit is again very important since we are talking about the corporate level strategy, which is at the top of the organization, and this is one of the broadest way of consideration in terms of defining the strategy. And in this unit we will be covering the concept of corporate strategy and different types of the corporate strategy, the concept of stability strategy, and different conditions which favors the stability strategy, four approaches to stability strategy, the concept of expansion strategies, conditions for opting expansion strategies, intensification in expansion strategies, ends of product market expansion will also be talked today, and the integration in expansion strategies, reasons favoring the integration in expansion strategies, diversification and its types, related and unrelated diversification, alternative routes to diversification, and last, the concept of retrenchment strategy and its types will be discussed here today. So let's discuss the concept of corporate strategy. So corporate strategies are concerned with the broad or the long-term questions that the corporate managers ask themselves. One is that what businesses are we in and what do we want to do with these businesses? So it's a kind of rethinking about their own organization. And this corporate strategy is a kind of sets the overall directions for the organizations to follow, and it also spells out the extent or the pace and the timing of the organization's growth, and it is primarily concerned with the choice of businesses, product line, or the market they need to refer to. The corporate strategies covers or deals with the following questions in addition to what was the prime question of the corporate managers. The question can be like what should be the nature and values of the organization in the broader sense. Another question could be like what are the aims in terms of creating value for stakeholders? What kind of businesses should the organization be in? What should be the scope of activity, whether divestment is required, whether expansion is required, what structure, systems, and processes will be necessary to link the various businesses to each other and to the corporate center. And last question, and can be like how can the corporate center add value to make the whole worth more than the sum of the parts? So for that, four types of corporate strategies have been identified. First is the stability strategy, which ensure that no change to the organization's current activities will take place. At the same time, it ensures that the retention of the existing strategy. So, in the case of stability strategy, you won't notice much of the changes. The existing practices are followed. But in the case of growth strategies, more emphasis in terms of the expansion. That is expansion of the organization's activities. The third type of corporate strategy is in terms of the retrenchment strategies. And this is something the crucial position for the firm, maybe the cost burden, maybe the other external market driven losses to the firm. So, as a result, in the case of retrenchment strategies, you will notice that the firm used to reduce the organization's level of activities. And the fourth is the combination strategies, which means the combination of about three strategies, combination of any of the two, any of the three, or something mix of it. So let's talk about each one of these strategy in detail now. So first we will be talking about the stability strategy. So stability strategy means maintaining its current business and the product line portfolios by maintaining the existing level of effort and is by satisfied with incremental growth. Similarly, the organization decides to serve the same markets with the same products and continues to pursue the same objectives with a strategic thrust on incremental improvement of functional performances. In this case, the organization concentrates more on its resources in a narrow product market sphere for the purpose of developing a meaningful competitive advantage. It also refer a kind of a stability strategy where a kind of defensive strategy is referred as products, markets, and functions remain unchanged. So you won't find much change in all these three major areas. This stability strategy also ideal in a stable business environment where an organization can devote its efforts in terms of improving its efficiency while not being threatened with external market environment forces. Now, if we refer some of the conditions which favors the stability strategies to be adopted by the corporate houses, then there are certain such conditions. One could be like environmental turbulences is minimal. It means that the organization does not foresee any major threat to itself and the industry concerned as a whole. So, in that case, they will be continuing with their existing strategy as a part of the stability strategy. The other situation could be where the organization just finished a period of rapid growth and now they need to consolidate its gains from pursuing more growth. A third situation could be where the organization's growth ambitions are very modest and it is content with incremental growth. The fourth situation could be where the industry is in a mature stage with a few or no growth prospects are being observed and the organization is currently in a comfortable position in the industry. So these conditions can fit for the stability strategy. Now, for that, four major approaches are adopted in the case of the corporate houses while referring to the stability strategy. The first is the holding strategy, where the organization continues at its present rate of development. And this approach suits an organization which doesn't have requisite resources to pursue increased growth for a longer period of time. The other type of approach in the case of stability strategy could be the stable growth strategy. And this is a kind of alternative essentially involves avoiding change, representing indecision or timidity in making a choice for a change. The third type of approach is harvesting strategy, where the prime focus of the organization is in terms of the dominant market and where the dominant market share and they seeks to take advantage of it of this position, thereby generating cash for future business expansion. So this type of approach is referred under the case of the stability strategy. The fourth type of approach is profit or end game strategy, where the organizations adopt this strategy by deciding to follow the same technology at least partially while transmitting into new technological domain in subsequent period of time. Now we also need to refer the growth strategy, or also known as the expansion strategies. The expansion strategies are designed to allow organizations to maintain their competitive position in rapidly growing national and international markets. And it's kind of, for successfully compete, survive, and flourish into the market, an organization has to pursue an expansion strategy. And expansion strategy provides a blueprint for business organizations to achieve their long-term growth objectives. And it also allows them to maintain their competitive advantage even in the advanced stage of product and market evolution, if it is into that. Now, we also need to understand some specific conditions for opting the expansion strategies or the growth strategies. So these are some conditions, as we have seen some conditions in the case of the uh, the other one. So in the case of the growth strategy, the some conditions could be like the organization having high growth objectives or the potentials. Apart from that, the new opportunities in the external business environment are seen. A market leader trying to continue being a market leader. Maybe the situation is something volatile in the market. Market surplus resources are available, and the regulatory environment is something favoring. Then we also need to understand the intensification in the case of the expansion strategies. And here the intensification involves primarily the kind of expansion within the existing line of business, where the intensive expansion strategy involves safeguarding the present position and expanding in the current product market space to achieve growth targets. This type of approach is very useful for the organizations that have not fully exploited the opportunities in existing in their current product market domain. And therefore, the intensive expansion of an organization can be accomplished in three ways, namely through the market penetration, number two, market development, and number three, by way of product development. Uh, since we are discussing the concept of the growth strategy, so we also need to understand the ANSOF's product market expansion grid, which has been identified by ANSOF in 1968, which refer to two important parameters. One is the market, and another is the product. So if the existing market is moving towards the new market, or exploring the new market, then at the same time it is going to have a scope of risk in that case, and therefore that type of a market would be considered as the market development phase. But at the same time, if we refer the kind of product which is from the existing product, and the market is something that inspiring, or the firm is required to identify new product or develop a new product, then this is something again giving a kind of scope in terms of increasing the risk towards that product, and that phase is something considered as the product development. But there is a kind of combination of a new product, and for the purpose of covering the new market, so that will be considered as the diversification, and this is something the firm try to identify and explore such kind of area, because in the present phenomena, where the existing market with the existing product, it's a more of a penetration position of the market, where neither the scope arises in terms of growth of the within the existing market with the existing product. Therefore, the NSHOF have referred this new market in terms of the new product identification, and that helps in terms of the diversification of product as well as the diversification of the market, and that led the firm to have more avenues of growth to explore. Now, we also need to have the integration and expansion strategies. That the integration strategy involves expanding externally by combining with other organizations. Here, the combination involves association and integration among different organizations and is essentially driven by need for survival and also for growth by building synergies. The combination of organizations may take the merger or the consolidation route, where the merger means that the combination of two or more concerns into one final entity, and the merged concerns go out of existence and their assets and liabilities are taken over by the acquiring organizations. But if we talk about the other route of combination, that is the consolidation, so in that case, two or more business units to form an entirely new organizations where all the original business entities cease to exist after the combination. Now, if we're referring the reasons which favors integration and expansion strategies, then some of such reasons would be like to increase market share, to avoid the costs of developing new products internally and bringing them to the market, maybe to reduce the risk of entering new business, maybe to speed up the process of entering the market, maybe to become more diversified, and maybe to reduce the intensity of competition which is taking over the competitors' business. Now, we also need to refer the concept of diversification uh, and its types. So, diversification involves moving into new lines of business, and we have also seen the advocacy of the NSHOF in this case of diversification, where the new product and new market has been identified in terms of the combination of these two. So when an industry consolidates and become mature enough, where most of the organizations in that industry would reach the limits of growth, using vertical and horizontal growth strategies. So in that case, two major type of diversifications applicable. One is concentric diversification and another is the conglomerate diversification. The concentric diversification is also related diversification as the other name to it, and the conglomerate diversification is also known as the unrelated diversification. So we will refer these two type of concepts in detail in terms of understanding. So when we refer the concentric diversification, so when an organization is said to have pursued a concentric diversification strategy, when it enters into new product or service area that belongs to a different industry category, but the new product or service is similar to the existing one with respect to technology or production or the marketing channel or the customers. So in that case, that type of diversification is considered as the related diversification or the concentric diversification. But on the other hand, if we refer the unrelated diversification or the conglomerate diversification, so it's a more of a growth strategy in which an organization seeks to grow by adding entirely unrelated products and markets to its existing businesses. And here the organizations particularly introduces new products considering the or using different technologies in new markets, and therefore we can also say that a conglomerate consists of a number of product divisions which sell different products principally to their own markets rather than to each other. Now, we need to understand different routes or the alternative routes to the diversification. For that, two broader category include the mergers and acquisition, and second is the strategic partnering. As we have, we can refer that mergers and acquisitions. In that particular case, two or more organizations they combine their operations through an exchange of stock, where in the case of merger, only one organization entity will eventually remain, but in the case of an acquisition, the purchase of one organization by the other take place. In the case of strategic partnering, it occurs when two or more organizations establish a relationship that combines their resources, capabilities, and core competencies. And the idea is to achieve some business objectives, and it can have three major types. uh, like as we have seen in the case of merger and acquisition, in the case of strategic partnering, it can have three such modes. One is the joint ventures, second is the long-term partnerships, and third is the strategic alliance. So we will discuss each one of these. In the case of the joint ventures, two or more firms form a separate independent organizations for strategic purposes. And if we talk about the long-term partnership, so in that case, two or more organizations, two or more firms, if they enter into a legal contract for a specific business purpose, so it will be termed as the long-term partnership. The third type of strategic alliance or the strategic partnership, partnering could be by way of strategic alliance, where two or more firms share their resources, their capabilities, or distinctive competencies in order to pursue some business purpose. So now we need to refer the third type of strategy, the corporate level strategy, that is the retrenchment strategy. As discussed earlier, that organizations specifically during the turbulence period, maybe which is something not in the control of the organization, need to emphasize this type of strategy termed as the retrenchment strategy. So we need to understand now when, what extent the retrenchment strategy can be referred to. So retrenchment is a short-term renewal strategy which is designed to overcome organizational weaknesses and that are contributing to deteriorating performances of the organization in the present phenomena. Here, the retrenchment strategies call for two primary actions. One could be by way of cost cutting, and the other could be like by restructuring. And this retrenchment strategy has three important types. First is turn around strategy, second is the survival strategy, and third is the liquidation strategy. So the turnaround strategy, as the first one of the retrenchment strategy, it helps or it primarily involves the classic retrenchment activities. Maybe it may include the product elimination and downsizing the workforce. So, laying off the employees or maybe eliminating a specific product from the product line can be such example in this case of turnaround strategy. And this type of strategy occurs due to increased competition, maybe uh, availability of raw materials getting shorter position. Maybe the profit margins are going down for the firm. Maybe the operating problems, including the strikes or depressed price levels, are also occurring. So, in these type of scenarios, the turnaround strategy as the retrenchment strategy within the corporate level strategy can be adopted. The other type of strategy within the retrenchment strategy is the survival strategy, and it's a kind of a strategy within the retrenchment strategy adopted uh, when the organization is on the verge of extinction. and it can opt for divestment, spin-off, and restructuring business operations. The other type of retrenchment strategy, the third is the liquidation strategy, which is the worst situation for the firm where the ultimate resort the firm is able to identify is by shutting down the operation of the entity, and this is usually the final resort for a declining organization. So now we have reached to the conclusion of unit number 9, that is corporate level strategy. So we can have a very quick recap of the session, what we discussed today. Uh, in today's session, we referred block number 3, a formulation of a strategy, where two important units, that is the competitive strategy, unit number 8, and unit number 9, corporate level strategy, were discussed. In unit number 8, competitive strategy, we discussed about the concept of competitive strategy, the formulation of competitive strategy, how to formulate the competitive strategy, and the wheels of competitive strategy were discussed. Subsequently, we also refer the four important levels of formulating the competitive strategy. We also refer the factors and the parameters which helps in determining the formulation of competitive strategy. We also refer the framework for the competitor analysis, because if the competitors point is not considered or their position is not analyzed, then something, the competitor position is something not available to the firm. So in that case, it is not a kind of win-win situation to the firm, that they are not aware about the rival's position. Also in this unit, we refer the components of a competitor's analysis, different components we discussed, and further the role of those competitor analysis components were referred. Further, we refer the concept and the types of competitive moves, whether the forward, backward move can be taken place, and the aggressive move that firm used to take. So those type of aspects were referred in this case. Then some key dimensions of competitive strategies were discussed. Then the concept of fragmented industries and the emerging industries, including the where we discussed in the case of emerging industries the new technological enabled industries like the artificial intelligence based, like the industries where the gaming technology are being adopted, or chatbot related artificial intelligence, robotics, or the bioinformatics type of technology are being adopted. We discussed. Similarly, the different elements of structural environment uh, in the case of the emerging industries considered were also discussed. We also discussed in that unit about the competitive strategies in terms of the fragmented and the emerging industries. In the second unit, that is unit number 9 in today's discussion, the session also referred the corporate level strategy. That is, at the top management, what are the broader policies or the strategy the organization consider. In that case, we discuss about the concept of the corporate strategy, what exactly the corporate strategy is, and the four major type of the corporate strategy we discussed. Then we refer the concept of the stability strategy, the first type of the corporate strategy, the conditions which favors to apply the stability strategy, we refer that. Then the four important approaches the stability strategy refer. So we also covered that. The concept of expansion strategies, then the conditions for adopting or opting out the expansion strategies, then intensification in expansion strategies were discussed. Then ENSOF's product market expansion grid, which talk about the the position of the diversification, which is a combination of the new market and the new product. That is, when a market or the existing market or the existing product reaches to a kind of penetration situation, so the diversification situation with maybe with the increase in the risk can be addressed by a diversification were discussed. Then integration in expansion strategies, then the different reasons which favoring the integration in the expansion strategies were discussed, and the diversification and its various types were also discussed. Then we also covered the concept of related and unrelated diversification, and which includes the alternate routes to diversification. And in the end, we refer the retrenchment strategies and its types. So this is all from our side. In upcoming session, we'll be talking about the fourth block, that is the last block of this course, where the implementation of the strategies and the monitoring related aspect will be discussed. So till that time, a very good day to all of you. Thank you.